Hello and welcome to episode 10 of From Crime Scene to Screen with myself, Therese, and Joe McElroy.
Hello.
We're back from a little small break. For no fault of our own, the fact that we just couldn't be bothered recording an episode during November, really.
Pretty much. Just finished the festival and then we're like, we didn't bother like messaging each other, we'll think about the next one or anything. We're just like,
I think we did. I think we did after the Halloween episode, and then I don't know. Like toward the end of October, it was my birthday. There was different stuff going on. November, I think, to be honest, it just that this last say half of the year has just flew in, and not that we neglected it. Not that we neglected our one single fan that listens into these episodes, because we know there is only one other person other than me and Joe who bother listening to these episodes. But we didn't mean to neglect you, but we are back just in time for Christmas. We're recording this on Sunday the 19th, so a couple of days and the big man will be here. And to be honest, there's no other way to ring in the Christmas spirit and festivities than talking about horrific serial killers and murder. I don't know what you think, Joe.
Yeah, no, especially a wee underrated one that we have here, because serial killers and Christmas time, it's very hard to find the two things lining up. Like, we were very lucky. Well, I said lucky, it's very morbid for me to say lucky, like with the Covina massacre being linked to Silent Night, Deadly Night, but there was literally nothing else after that. Like, there's a film called Christmas Evil about a disgruntled worker going mad at Christmas time, but there's no real cases like that in real life. So we decided just to stick with a wintry theme. So are you going to let the good people know who we're covering today?
So we have decided to cover Robert Hansen, Bob Hansen, Bob the Butcher, or Bob the Butcher Baker, as he had as many aliases. One that I think is quite unknown as well, to be honest. He's from Iowa, but a lot of the crimes are in Anchorage and Alaska. So we're trying to go for the frozen, wintry, cold atmosphere rather than a Christmas sort of festive atmosphere. But there's no denying that what Robert Hansen did was extremely horrific, and it's strange to think that it isn't as well known. I know, Joe, you and I, before going through our research, one of the things that we tend to do is have a listen to other podcasts that we would listen to ourselves. So you had suggested the last podcast on the left. They did a quite bumper episode filled with Robert's life, his background, even a lot of the quirks that he had. You were mentioning that they added, they kind of fleshed out a lot more information than you would have got sort of in any like Wikipedia article or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And it was a great listen. And yeah, like you said, they usually do a great job at, expanding, what is basically sometimes just a line on Wikipedia, like, oh, they had a rough upbringing, and then they explain, okay, this is how they had a rough upbringing, and so on and so forth. But then, the film that ties into this as well, which is probably the main reason why we're here, because we're a film podcast primarily, is the 2013 film by Scott Walker, The Frozen Ground, with Nicolas Cage, John Cusack, and is it Vanessa Hudgens or Selena Gomez? I always get them two mixed up.
No, it is Vanessa Hudgens.
It is.
So it is Gabriella from High School Musical. Has dropped out of school after she broke up with Troy Bolton, and is now working as a sex worker in Anchorage, Alaska.
With 50 Cent as her pimp.
With what I can't describe either as the most horrific or fantastic wigs I've ever seen on a grown man.
I know we're going to get into it with the film, but his character, you're like, what is the point of you being here?
Oh, not a clue.
It's like, this is just pointless. Like, I think he's producer on it. Maybe he just was like, right, I'm producing it, so I'm going to stick myself in it.
That me and boyfriend Ryan both watched this earlier today, and that was the discussion we had. Like, the only reason he is in this is because he must have put some money toward it, because
there you go.
There, when we do, launch on discuss about the film, yeah, it's very clear that his character has little to no relevance, input, or impact on the story. But
we'll get into that whenever we get into that.
Yeah. So, yes, I suppose without further ado, the episode itself is aptly named On Festive Frozen Ground. So we will get stuck, I suppose, straight in with starting where it all started, essentially, with Robert's childhood. Joe, if you want to kick off and sort of lay the ground.
Aye, so as far as we know, he's no relation to the Hansen brothers who had that hit song Mbop. Although that's all I could think of. See, doing this research, that's all kept popping into my head. Was just Mbop? It's like, no, stop that. There's no, don't. But yeah, it's been stuck in my head since. But anyway, Robert himself was born in the 15th of February, 1939 in Esterville, Iowa. His parents were Danish immigrants, with his father being a baker, and it's said that he was quite an overbearing presence in Robert throughout his childhood and adolescence. He would sort of encourage him to get in the family business, and eventually did. He became a baker just like his father. But he, they think that sort of is one of the things that contributed to his later crimes. But at the same time, there's lots of people that have overbearing parents and they don't go on to do horrific things. So it's a very slim sort of a tenuous connection there.
Yeah.
But even growing up, he was known to be extremely shy. He had a stutter. He would suffer from a severe acne, and it would leave him quite scarred as a result. Last podcast and Les went into this in detail, and said he was sort of like a prototype for what are incels now, because he was always sort of striving to get the attention of girls in school, and he was kind of wondering, why don't they love me? I'm this, that, and the other.
He thought he was like a holier than thou
exactly
character.
Like, not to go off on the tangent about Elliot Rodgers, that whole idea, the perfect gentleman and all this here nonsense. So that he should be rewarded justly with that. But as a result of that, he would sort of, the flip side of that meant, if he didn't get what he wanted, he would sort of have all these sort of revenge fantasies, like, okay, well, if I can't have that, I'm going to take it out in my head and create all this vivid imagery of, like, this girl doesn't want me, so I'm going to have, thoughts of hurting her or killing her. And, that's sort of where the seeds were planted for, who he would become, essentially. And he was, to sort of, as a cathartic way of getting around that, he got into the likes of hunting and archery. He would practice with a knife quite a bit out the back of his father's bakery, and even like locals were kind of worried about going, like, he's like spending hours upon hours just like, messing about with knives and bow and
he was really young. Like, I think he was either between 10 to teens. Like, first of all, he shouldn't, a child, well, I mean, looking at the time that as it is, they were probably walking about with AK-47s just stuffed in their bags. But
it's 50s America.
It's it's not uncommon for kids that age to have knives. But even at that, the sort of the behaviour that he would output to other people would have raised a lot of questions and things. And one of the things, I suppose, one of the major things that sort of stuck out, and you touched upon the fact that everybody, not everybody who's had an overbearing either mother, father, or parents, which still happens today, they don't lead to end up murdering over 30 people. But one of the strange things I find, and when you do your research and I suppose listen to other podcasts, is the sort of focus on the fact that he was left-handed. And at the time, and I think there's maybe other serial killers and murderers out there that might have had the sort of the same behaviour given to them, is that if you were left-handed, it was seen to be like a sign of the devil or something. So like his father forced him to write with his right hand.
Oh yeah, like the whole, the evil go to the left hand of God, and he will rise up the right and all that there. Yeah.
Which, it again. I'm sure there's people out there that aren't murderers or serial killers who, for one reason or another, their parents forced them to write with their right hand. And there's people out there who are ambidextrous. I can't even say that word. And to be honest, I'm a bit jealous because I cannot write with my left hand for shit. And if I was to ever like forge somebody's signature or anything, like it would be terrible. But with his father, it came out that it forced him to lead and then have like a really extreme stutter. So you're coming back to the fact that thick glasses, acne scars, which I may add as well. I have a lot of acne scars myself, and I can tell you now I won't be murdering anybody, and this is now recorded on BanterFlix's platform. So yeah, I got a bit annoyed that everyone kept focusing on the acne scars because we all have them. But yeah, with that being having the stutter as well, I mean, you come back to this thing, he probably thought he was absolutely irresistible, but he wasn't. And, having that sort of uppiness attitude topped off with maybe not being the most popular person in school, give him like a real warped sense of pride or something. I don't know. Like he just clearly thought he was better than what he was, essentially. So teaming that with someone who's wielding a knife flying about a bakery, you're asking for trouble, really.
It's literally like his father's profession. It's all these ingredients going into this like cake of murder almost,
It's like the Powerpuff Girls. It's like Dr. X sitting there going around and...
It's like sugar, knives and everything.
Guns, hunting, just acne scars, like pimples, throwing them in, and he just comes out.
They need to have a serial killer episode of Bake Off, I think. Just to see like what Paul would do when he gets to Jeffrey Dahmer's dish. Like, oh, what do you have here, Jeffrey? And you're like, you don't want to try that, Paul.
It's just, hey, Paul, it's just the neighbour next door. He used to run past me every morning, and it's just his leg served up on a plate, teamed with some croutons and creme fraiche.
And then he gets a handshake. Well done, Jeffrey.
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing, I don't know if anyone else followed this year's Bake Off, but we've seen some handshakes going out maybe that they didn't necessarily need to be given to certain people. So
very questionable, very, very questionable.
Very questionable behaviour. And again, Paul Hollywood, if you're listening, we're not saying that you would give a handshake to a serial killer. It's just a bit of a poke at you, that's all. We love you on the show.
Well, I don't really love him, but it's
admiration.
Yeah, okay. I'll give him that. Well, back to Bobby here. He joined the Army Reserves in 1957, but he only served there for a year. I can't really recall why. He was discharged, but I can't really recall why. I think it was just like something minor, like not being able to make his bed properly or something like that there.
Yeah, it was. So it doesn't, anything I've read, it doesn't explicitly say why, but it's implied that it was just to do with like cleanliness, which is weird because, if he was still into hunting and things like that, like one of the main, not that I'm a hunter, but one of the main things of that process is being meticulous in the sense of, cleaning out your prey and that sort of methodical behavior. So it's strange that, that sort of, he wasn't able to essentially follow that up in something that was so regimented like the army.
Well, that's what I mean. I think maybe that was like a learning curve for him almost. He was like, okay, if I'm ever to do anything successfully, I have to be organised. Because the thing is, for his lack of intelligence, he made up for it with organisation, as we'll see, whenever we get into the actual crimes themselves. I think he was compared to Gary Ridgway in that sense. He's not a very smart person, but he was very, very organised. But anyway, whenever he was discharged, he later worked as an assistant drill instructor at a police academy, not far from where he originally was born, in Pocahontas, Iowa. So I couldn't for the life of me find the name of this the name of this next person, because when he was there, he sparked a whirlwind romance with a local girl who he married in 1960. I could not find the name of this woman anywhere, and I don't think it's mentioned. I know he gets married later on again, but this original, woman that he got married to, I don't recall there being too much detail about it. Maybe it's because she wanted to, remove herself from him because of, the crimes later on.
Yeah, so I think, and we'll move on to that one, we next to describe his first crimes. I think, like you, I couldn't find height nor anything for this person, but she later divorces him quite abruptly after he is arrested for one of his first crimes. And I'm almost sure that you can, if you're involved in something like that, I think you can withhold your information.
Yeah.
There is some sort of confidentiality laws. Even within the film, I don't think there's any name changes in the film. I think everyone who's in it is named as who they are in the story.
I think Nicolas Cage's character, he's like an amalgamation of a number of cops. He isn't the main one who we'll get into. But do you want to get into those crimes then that eventually led to his divorce?
Yeah. So, I mean, not like other sort of the previous episodes we've covered. By the sounds of it, he didn't really have a terrible childhood. So it's hard to think that someone like this can flick so quickly. But it's those type of people that I suppose you need to be a bit more wary of.
It's the cold, quiet ones thing. Yeah.
It's the cold, quiet ones. And as Joe touched upon, he had this real holier than thou sort of sense of love for himself, and he thought that he deserved everything in the world. And one of his big issues was that if he didn't get it, revenge was at the top of his list for anything he did. So one of his first crimes was on the 7th of December 1960. So Hansen essentially, I think he sort of coerced someone else who had previously went to school with him. I've read that on a few articles, and I think in some of the podcast episodes, but him and this other fella who he convinced basically went to their local Board of Education school in Pocahontas, and in revolt for everyone who bullied him in school, was ever nasty to him, all the girls that turned him down, he decided that he would burn down the building. Luckily there wasn't anyone inside the building, but he took it upon himself to think that this was a big act of revenge against all of those who done him wrong as a child. But he was arrested, and as we'll see as things go on, his sentencing and the time served is quite there's quite a difference in it. He was given a 3-year sentence, but only served 20 months of said total sentence. While he was in prison, one of the sort of terms, I think, of his arrest was that he would see a psychiatrist, and that is where the psychiatrist diagnosed him with bipolar disorder. And the psychiatrist sort of also said that he had an infantile personality, which essentially was, not in the case that he's a grown man who thinks he's a child. It's more so that his behaviour is quite childish. And I'm sure there is people out there that we know who sort of carry on this way. There's a real sense of immaturity. And because of this, he seems obsessed at getting back at anyone who wronged him, whether that is a girl who turned him down for, I don't know, offering him a pencil, to a girl or a fella, turning him down for a night out.
Right. But you're right. There are people like that, in and around us all the time. Just look within the last 2 years, Karen culture. That is the exact same sort of notion. It's like, I didn't get things my way, so I'm going to call the police and waste time about that. Police are going to laugh it off, but I'll have a sense...
It's going to work in my favour.
Yeah, I'll have a smug sense of satisfaction, and, I'll put you down because I have the power to do so, and all sorts of nonsense like that. But in the end, it is just ultimately childish behaviour, like you were saying.
It's like a real seniority complex for whatever reason.
Aye.
But yeah, just touching upon that, referring back to what you said about his wife, sort of not wife at the time, but didn't really have much details about him. but while he was in prison, she immediately divorced him. And I'm sure she is grateful that she did at the time, given what happened further on. But so years following his time in prison, much like most, I suppose, convicted killers and murderers, that they sort of start off quite small, petty crimes, and then they escalate. So he was arrested numerous times for petty crimes and major thefts, and all in all, never really served much time at all for whatever he was arrested for. So we all know around this time that the police weren't necessarily the most effective body to be able to handle these type of things. And we all know that if, things were handled correctly at the time, further murders wouldn't have happened. But we can't speak for the past. So after, I suppose, serving numerous times for the petty crimes, rhymes, and that, oh my god, those 3 sentences rhymed. I am a rapper tonight. It's great.
It's 50 Cent. It's 50 Cent. It's just seeped in your consciousness.
Is coming through my body and is embodying me right now. But essentially, during that time, somehow, who knows why, he married his second wife in 1963 and had 2 kids. God help them. And after their marriage, he up and moved them to Anchorage, Alaska. So I don't know if Iowa is warm. I don't know. Is it warm?
I can't imagine. It's up sort of Midwest America. I'd imagine it wouldn't be that warm. But at the same time, like,
Alaska's even cold. Like, Alaska would be cold as sin. Like.
Baltic. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, that wife that he remarried to, her name was Darla Henriksen. And I was reading a bit about her as well, and the reason she sort of was attracted to him and so on and so forth was like, okay, I know he's an ex-criminal,
because he was a nerd.
I can fix him. I see something in him. Like, everyone else is going, no, Darla, no, he's bad news, but I can fix him. it literally was a case of that woman. When you're reading this. Yeah, I was literally reading
every woman.
Because I was reading this and she was well spoken, so on and so forth, and I was like, this all boils down to you saying I can fix him, and ultimately she couldn't, because as time goes on and as these crimes and so on escalate, their sort of relationship and that just goes there. And
also she hasn't a baldy notion about what he's doing. No. So yeah, thanks, Miss Hendrickson. You didn't do your job that you set out to do, and it resulted in a lot of horrific crimes. So
well, we can't really blame her. Like,
it's all on her, essentially.
Oh, Jesus.
No, I take that back. It's definitely all Robert Hansen. I'm really sorry.
No, it's been recorded. Sure. I'm gonna get Jim to edit that out, and we'll just twist this episode to make you blame a victim here.
I mean, I don't think it would be the first time I've done it. Whenever we record these, I do tend to go off on tangent, but it wouldn't be us if it didn't. But
exactly.
To take the shine away from me being a horrible person, we'll put it back on someone else who is a horrible person, Robert Hansen.
Yeah, it's all his fault.
But yeah, so essentially the family moved to Anchorage, and it was said that he was really well liked in the community. And much to his protesting as a child, he ended up going into the family business anyway. So I'm sure his father was well delighted with himself. So yeah, essentially opened up a bakery when he moved there, and yeah, well known in the community. I think quite involved in the community. I think they went to church quite a lot, and just everybody knew him as a nice guy. But again, when you see sort of merge between him and Gary Ridgway, they have their 9-to-5 life, which is their family life and their behaviour, and I suppose even John Wayne Gacy too.
I seen a bit of BTK in him, to be honest.
Yeah. They were all quite good at having the sort of second life mentality. So he sort of was quiet for a while when he moved to Anchorage, up until 1971, where it appears things really started to escalate. So in 1971, he was arrested for abducting and raping a local housewife, and also an unidentified sex worker. The local housewife, I think from what I could see, she was just a real estate agent. So it was just a woman living her life. And yeah, Robert just took a real shine into her. I think he had first followed her home and essentially didn't do anything about it. And I think maybe crossed his mind that he would go into the house, but left it. Then went back a second time, entered the house with a gun and raped and abducted her at gunpoint. The unidentified sex worker, not much is suppose really known of her attack, but it said that it was much of the same. He had abducted her and raped her. So for those crimes, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the attack on the housewife. But unfortunately, the attack on this sex worker was dropped as part of a plea bargain. Which, you know, we all know that given the sort of way people think about sex workers then and even now, you know, the police probably just shushed it off, essentially.
Well, that's the thing. The police shared a similar view as Robert. Like, Robert just viewed them as like, oh, you're there for a service,
Lesser.
you know, and it's like, I can't rape you because it's not rape if I'm paying you for a service.
If I'm paying you to have sex, me doing what I'm doing is essentially sex, whether it is against your will or not, which is totally wrong because it's not at all. And yeah, as you said, the police had the same mentality. And, you know, even 5 years for what he did, you know, even just solely on the local housewife.
It's still
wild.
Pretty,
minimal.
Weak, minimal. Yeah, that's the word. That's wild. Like, that was what, the 70s? I don't know. Well, to be fair, have things really gotten that much better? When you look at some of the sex crimes, even here, you know, it's horrendous, the actual sentence and the way people can get away with it. It's just down to what lawyer or solicitor you have. It's rotten. But here, that's a rant we could go off on another tangent with. But all in all, it's
all in all, if he was put away for a longer sentence, again, as we keep coming back to so much of what happened further on down the line, could have happened. We don't know, but it could have been avoided. But on top of it all, and like a previous sentence that he had, out of the 5 years, he only served 6 months in prison.
Oh, because he was a good boy, was he? Was he a good boy in prison? Did he behave himself?
He was such a good baker boy.
Angel.
And he was released on a work release program because they thought it was his best way to be introduced back into society. Who knows? But while on that work release program, he was caught for stealing.
Bit of a kleptomaniac.
It's not whatever work release he was doing, God knows what it was for. I don't know, carpenter or something. I think he stole like a jacksaw. Essentially, I think what he stole was like a saw.
Yeah.
It was a saw. So yeah, clearly he's seen the error of his ways. And for that, he was sentenced again to another 5 years in prison, and was enforced to receive treatment for his bipolar disorder. And all in all, the Alaska Supreme Court then decided, no, do you know what? We'll just reduce the sentence and release him with time served. So he was put in for 5, served 6, did his work release program, was then put back in for 5, and Alaska Supreme Court essentially looked at the 6 months and went, do you know what? He's already done 6 months. We'll let him go.
Bobby, go on out there, make some delicious cupcakes for the community because you've did your time.
Bake some loaves. Everybody's missing their wheaten bread. For their Sunday toast, and I'm trying to think of like American
brunch won't be the same in Anchorage without your delicious pastries.
That is what it is. The Karens of Anchorage are missing their Sunday brunch, and they just want some toast with their mimosas. And yeah, your wife just can't do it on her own.
They have the avocados, but they don't have the toast.
No.
They are.
So essentially, first crimes, theft and petty crimes, things like that, they are pretty bad, but the fact that one of your first crimes then was abducting and raping somebody is going to cause alarm bells. So going from one level to the next level to the worst level, Joe, if you want to get started, I suppose focus on the murders then, the hard part of it all.
Oh yeah, the lovely stuff. The thing is, like, it's believed he killed, the killings that he committed began as early as 1971 and they stretched to 1983. Sort of all follow the same sort of MO where he would pick up a sex worker, force her at gunpoint to go to his cabin where he would, rape them, and then he would sort of keep them tied up for a day or two and torture them before taking them to a secluded area on his plane. Because, as you know, Alaska, it's a very sparse area. There's not a very low population density in certain areas, so he'd take them off literally to the frozen ground, as it was. And
ding, 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 ding.
Aye, we can all leave now. I would take them to these areas to basically hunt them, essentially, before, which would result in him either shooting them or stabbing them to death. But the thing that really got things, the ball rolling on it was down to the sort of position of sex worker, what was her name, Cindy Paulson. See, on the 13th of June 1983, he offered her $200 in order to perform oral sex on him. So, as per his MO, she agreed, to go into his car, whatever, to, do the deed as such. He pulled a gun on her, and then he took her to his home in Muldoon. And it is there he proceeded to rape and torture her.
That was in his family home as well, wasn't it?
Yes, sorry. What was that? I forgot to jot that down, but thanks for pointing that out. It was his family home. Because his family were away. I think it was just a general trip to a relative or something like that. It was he just basically planned it. It was like, right, family's away, I'm going to do what I do. So yeah, he had her chained up to the basement, and whilst she was chained up, he decided to take a wee nap in the same room as her on the city.
Smart boy.
Oh, I know. But then he took her and put her in his car again. To drive to, I think, I can't remember pronounce the name. Is it Millfield Airport? That's where he basically kept his plane, which he would fly in and out of these, areas. And while he was loading up his plane, she seen an opportunity to sneak out of the car, and basically she managed to free herself, but she basically had no shoes on and she was handcuffed, but she managed to run down 6th Avenue. When Hansen noticed, he chased her down, but she managed to flag down a truck in time, which had driven her to Mush Inn, like a little hotel motel. At the main desk, she pleaded with the clerk to contact her boyfriend, who was staying at another hotel. But at the same time, the truck driver, once he'd arrived to work, had called the police to report the incident. So the Anchorage Police Department then arrived at the motel where her boyfriend was staying, which was the Big Timber Motel, and it was there they found her still handcuffed in room 110. She was then taken into police custody I shouldn't say police custody, she was just taken into the police station where questioning ensued to, try and find out, what happened to her. And she basically described, Hansen during the questioning itself. And this, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier with sex workers and basically how they were treated like lesser humans, almost, even ones that are killed are known as were known then as the lesser dead. They denied her accusation and thought she was just basically trying to extort Robert.
Yeah.
Thinking, it's like, oh, you're only saying that because, this guy is an upstanding member of the community, this, that, and the other, and you're just like
essentially trying to blackmail him. Yeah. Yes,
that's it. Blackmail in short. And the thing is, they said that even though he's a criminal record of arson, rape, theft, abduction, all these things, they're all red flags, and they're like, nah, you're making that up because you're a sex worker. Basically, that was it.
Yeah.
They didn't want to hear or looking at beyond that. So, despite all of that, around this time, the Alaskan State Troopers had formed a task force led by a Glenn Flothy. I can never say his name, but I like sort of
like a fluffy coffee.
It's like Flothy, Mr. Flothy.
It must be like Glenn Sleuth or something.
I bet you it's like Glenn Fluff.
Yeah, it's like
something like that. But anyway, he, like I said, he was heading sort of a team investigating this, all these dead bodies that had been showing up in and around the Anchorage area, and Seward, I think, is the area.
Yeah.
Basically, just all these bodies become discovered of all these young ladies. The first was found in a Cluckna Road, and because they couldn't identify the body of the woman, the lady became just known as a Cluckna Annie.
Yeah.
And then for a further 2 bodies have been found belonging to a Joanna Messina and a Sherry Morrow. And Fluff felt that they were all connected. So he was like, right, there's something going on here. And this is before he knew anything about Bob Hansen and what happened there with
Cindy and stuff.
Cindy.
Yeah.
So he's like, right, I'll go to the FBI, I'll go to their profilers and see, can they come up with an idea of who this person might be? Get a bit of an MO from their end of things. So they went to there, and famous FBI agent we all sort of know well from Mindhunter, John Douglas.
The man himself.
Johnny D. He offered an offender profile. And he said, right, basically the guy who done these murders would have been an experienced hunter, would probably have had low self-esteem, had a history... tick. Had a history of rejection from women.
Tick.
Would likely keep souvenirs or possibly have a stutter as well.
Tick.
Who could this be? And who has been doing similar crimes to these? So obviously with this information, along with Paulson's testimony, even though the APD had sort of disregarded it, and that's the thing about, it all comes down to police forces at the time. They're like, oh no, we shot that case, that's it done. And you're like, no, but it may be useful for this here we're investigating.
Yeah, they were so protective of it.
Exactly.
And it was the embarrassment.
That's the thing. They're always so precious about sharing this information, because I think it just boils down to like, oh, we want all the glory for this. Yeah. We want this, that, and the other. So then obviously Floth was like, right, fuck yous, we don't care. Get this testimony, because it more or less it shows Robert Hansen did these crimes. It's all too good to be true for not to be him. So he managed to get a warrant to look through Hansen's plane, his vehicles, and his house as well. And on the 27th of October 1983, they discovered jewellery belonging to some of the missing women, as well as an array of firearms. And the kicker was an aeronautical map which had 37 X markings on it. So that's where he was like, right, got him. That was the clincher. So the thing is, despite this evidence, whenever Robert was taken into police custody and charged, he denied everything that had happened. But eventually he blamed the women for his actions. Like, it's one of those things, like, the more and more evidence that was thrown in front of him, the sort of weaker he became. He's like, okay, they're on.
He didn't have a foot to stand on.
Exactly.
Sorry, a leg to stand on or whatever, yeah.
No, that's perfect. You're bloody perfecting me going on rambles here. You're like, get it in one word, Joe, come on.
We're on a schedule, Joe.
I know, I haven't even gotten the film. But you eventually blamed the women for his actions, as we sort of alluded to earlier, going, oh, it's their fault, they're doing
like he was as a child. He blamed everybody else for his issues. Yeah, the
infantile stuff coming to the fore. So then he as each item of evidence was brought forward, he confessed to everything that was brought in front of him, and to spree attacks against women in Alaska in 1971 at the time. So, do you want to go into then the sort of finer details then, and then his eventual imprisonment there, Therese?
I think what we should do just before moving on, is I suppose just focus on the victims themselves and name them essentially, because it's quite sad to think that essentially Hansen murdered 17 women, but out of the 17, he was only formally charged with 4. And as time has went on, they have found other bodies. When I was researching, I think the most recent, I think they actually found was in the summer, was another person's body.
What, literally like 2020?
Like 2020, no, 2021.
Sorry. Wow.
June, July. It was on like one of the Wikipedia pages. The bodies only recently found, and it was the same MO, same way they were found. One either gunshot to the head with a Ruger 14, stab wounds, and they were often had something wrapped around their head, around their neck, and then essentially evident that they at one point in time were wearing a piece of jewellery that was then forcefully removed. But yeah, I'll just quickly run through. Essentially some of the names, because that's one thing that you never find, and then most things that focus on that, they don't They don't name the victims.
It's all about the killer, unfortunately.
So it's also really scary to think the age range between 17 and 41. So I'll start off with the first here. Was Cecilia Beth Van Zatten, who was age 17. She went missing on the 22nd of December 1971 and was found on Christmas Day 71. Hansen has always denied killing her, but she is an X on his map. Then we have Megan Siobhan Emmerich. She was missing on the 7th of July 1973, and she was age 17. Her body has never been found, but based on the area that she went missing, the police were able to match another X on the map relating to her. Mary Kathleen Till, who was 22, went missing 5th of July 75. Same again, she's never been found, but her last whereabouts are similar to where an X on the map was. You touched on Clutna Annie. Wasn't really sure what age she was. They were thinking 16 to 25. Joanna Messina, you touched upon her as well. She was 24. We have Roxanne Eastland, who was 24. She went missing 20th of June 1980. Hansen has confessed to killing her, but her body's never been found. Lisa Futrell, who was the oldest of his victims, she was 41, went missing 6th of September 1980, was found 9th of May 84. Sherry Morrow, you also touched upon her, 23. Andrea Fish Altry was 22, went missing 2nd of December 81. Sue Luna, who was 23, went missing the 26th of May 82, was found April 24th 84. She was stripped completely nude and forced to run through the forest while Hansen hunted her like an animal. She was shot repeatedly to death. Robin Peakley, who was 19, it's not determined when she went missing, but she was found April 84. Her identity has only been discovered through forensic genealogy, so the same genealogy that was used in the Golden State Killer revelation, and that was only just discovered in October 21. So October of this year, she was just identified, so her family would be able to lay her to rest essentially. Before that, she was nicknamed as Horseshoe Harriet. No idea why. We have Delynn Frey, who was 20. Paula Golding, who was 21. Cindy Paulson, who was 17, who is the only known survivor of Robert Hansen. Mayla Larson, 25. Teresa Watson, 22. Angela Ferdine, 24. And Tammy Peterson, who was 20. And yeah, as I said, out of those 17 women, he was only ever charged with 4 murders of Sherry Morrow, Joanna Messina, Clutna Annie, and Paula Golding, and he was charged with the kidnapping and rape of Cindy Paulson. So yeah, just incredible to think that, and a lot of these, you can go on to essentially go onto his Wikipedia page and it gives you a breakdown, but a lot of these he actually admitted to killing, and you know, they had his, I suppose, his testimony admitting to killing them, but for one reason or another, they didn't use that against him in his sentencing. But is the penultimate, I suppose, not the penultimate, because I always get confused what penultimate is. The final finale. The finale of us all is Hansen's essential imprisonment. So his charges were as follows. Hansen was charged with assault, kidnapping, multiple weapons offences, theft and insurance fraud. The insurance fraud part was one of the ways that the police were initially going to arrest him on, because some of the police detectives didn't think that Cindy Paulson's testimony was solid. But basically, he had filed a claim with his insurance company to say that I think like numerous sort of trophies were stolen from his house or something, and he got a payout for it, and the money that he got for that led him to buy his plane. But again, it was known to the police at the time that he had used a false claim and insurance to buy the plane, but yet nothing was ever done. So there's another thing that he had done that they could have used against him at the time, and then linked everything, but they didn't. So
it's a bit like here, the claim capital of Europe. That's Northern Ireland for you.
Absolutely.
You know, he would be at home here. He's like, I just put a wee claim in. Got a wee plane out of that. You know,
just sticking it in. Even like going to a small claims court or whatever, or crisis loan, he'd be living his best life.
Oh, big time.
But
he wouldn't even be doing the double. He'd be doing like the triple or quadruple.
He'd be doing the quadruple because he'd have the hunting business and then his baker business and everything going on.
Oh, aye.
You'd find him in the Sunday Life, no doubt. But
front page every weekend,
every single weekend. But so, what sort of led to his arrest, along with Cindy's testimony and what they found in his house? The thing that sort of made it solid was that the ballistics tests that were ran on his gun directly matched the bullets found at all the crime scenes and those that were found in the bodies. Once this sort of was announced, that's when Hansen entered in a plea bargain, because he's a little child and he loves doing that. So he pleaded guilty to 4 homicides that the police had exact evidence for, and he also provided further information for other victims. He essentially took the map that they had found, and as part of his, I suppose, sentencing, was forced to show the police the other 17 grave sites. 12 of which have been exhumed, and the remains have been returned to their families to be able to bury them. Unfortunately, 5 of those were never found, either due to natural causes. They're in Alaska. The snow's going to clearly destroy that. But at the same time, I think it was Joanna Messina possibly, or Sherry Morrow. When her body was found, a bear had sort of mauled away at part of it. So yeah, natural causes and where they were. Essentially, the other 5 bodies were lost, which is terrible to think. But at the same time, it's good that those 12 families were able to lay their family to rest.
Get a bit of peace with it, yeah.
So his ultimate sentence, after 5 years here, 6 months there, 3 days here, he was sentenced to 461 years in prison, and he would never be eligible for parole. And that's when you hear the trumpet sounds and the trumpet blast and do. But yeah, Star Baker essentially. And yeah, I suppose the most bittersweet thing of it all is that Robert Hansen died on the 21st of August in 2014 due to natural causes. So he didn't suffer. He didn't have any of the horrifying diseases. He didn't have COVID like the likes of the dating game killer, so he could really suffer. No, he just died of natural causes, age 75. And yeah, no doubt, I wouldn't be surprised, took with him a lot more victims. I wouldn't be surprised that he killed more people, and so he's raped more people.
Exactly.
That we'll never know.
So who knows? Like, that was just one map they found. Like, you know, there could be many other maps with many other X's on it. Because he
was known for having hidden spots and things that he used to hide things. So
God knows what else.
You don't know.
Because that's the thing. Even like the jewelry and that he had from these victims, he gave it away as presents and stuff like that. And I think
his wife and things,
so that's a creep. And I got what was coming to him in the end, but it's a shame he just wasn't caught sooner, and the police weren't more attentive in doing their jobs properly.
Which is the recurring theme as we go through these episodes.
That's it. The more you go into these, you're more like, there's a lot in common between these cases in terms of how they end, you know.
But from one car crash to the other, although I'm joking, it's not really a total car crash. It's all right.
Well, it's.
Do you want to kick off the film we're going to be discussing then, the 2013 Frozen Ground?
Of course, not to be confused as being a prequel to Frozen or anything like that. Frozen Ground, like I said at the start, 2013 film by Scott Walker. It's got Nicolas Cage in it, and he basically plays like an amalgamation of the 3 your fella Fluffy, him and a few other cops around that time. There's John Cusack, he plays Hansen, and Vanessa Hudgens plays Cindy Paulson. Amongst the others like 50 Cent, who is her pimp and is baffling as to why he's in the actual film itself. What did you actually think of the film? I'm curious to know what you thought, Therese, because I'm the one who kind of suggested it was either this case or the Iceman, because I was just trying to think of something wintry, because it's hard to find something that ties the two together. But yeah, what do you think of the Frozen Ground?
I think it is probably a play-by-play of the story.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of kicks off with Cindy escaping Robert Hansen's clutches, essentially. She is found in the motel, severely shaken up, clearly had been attacked, still handcuffed, and she's taken into police custody. And as we said, she's questioned there heavily. At one point, the detective that is interviewing her starts being quite has a real accusatory tone. And she asks him, am I under arrest here? Like, I'm the one coming to you saying I've been attacked, and the way you're speaking to me, it's almost as if, I've did a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And he says quite a few questionable things to her that, they're referred to as prostitutes in the film. It's 2013.
But they're speaking. No, it's context for. It's set in the 70s, 80s, so that's different time in that respect.
We'll forgive them for that.
Well, it's kind of historically accurate in that sense, but at the same time, we all know it's derogatory.
But yeah, he explicitly says to her, well, you're a sex worker. You offered to give this man oral sex. It's your fault that you got into this position, essentially.
Yeah, it's not his fault for attacking her or being overly aggressive. And when she said no, he continued. That's not his fault. It's entirely hers.
So there's a real focus on Cindy in the film, and I suppose I can understand on one hand why they would do that. I suppose she is the only surviving victim of Robert Hansen, and is the only one that would have, I suppose, a real true to life depiction of what happened. But I think some of it kind of faltered in the sense that they tried to flesh out a storyline for Cindy outside of what was going on, which I don't think they needed to do. I don't know what you think in terms of her sort of the scenes where she's in the club, and we're talking about 50 Cent, the things with her pimp,
when
and
she's working as a stripper, is that what you mean?
When she's working as a dancer and things like that,
well, that stuff, to be honest with you, that's purely a marketing thing. It's like, with Vanessa Hudgens here, we haven't seen Vanessa Hudgens like this before, because I think she was just coming off High School Musical maybe at the time this was made.
I wonder if it was actually.
You have a wee look-see in that. I think that was the case, because I actually seen this in the cinema when it came out, because my motivation to go see it was like, it's John Cusack and Nicolas Cage together again first time since Connor, and it's a true crime story, and I think I'd seen Zodiac just before it, so I was like, it's another true crime film. It's bound to be good and all this here. Like, I suppose my general view in the film is it's alright. It's sort of just a middle in the road. I don't think it's as bad as All Good Things. And it's nowhere near as good as the likes of Zodiac and M that we covered previously. It's just a by the numbers sort of film, and the problem with it is it's very cliched as well. Like, Nicolas Cage's cop, he's 2 weeks off retirement, and this is his last big case he's being pulled into, and his wife is basically the biggest cliche at all. It's like, just when everything looks like it's all hope's lost, like, no, you go out there and you solve this for all of these women that have gone missing or been murdered.
But initially she's quite against him sort of helping this girl, and sort of trying to find things out, and
well, I kind of half get that, because she's already gone nowhere with the APD at this point.
Well,
so it's just what's the use, right? The APD's done nothing for me. In fact, they've actually accused me of this here. So why should I go to a state trooper? I know it's like another step above in terms of the hierarchy of police forces in America. So it's like, well, what are you going to do that they haven't already done for me? You know, are you going to make things worse? Because you know, nobody's believed what she's been through, essentially.
Straight up to that point, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, in general, I think it's just an alright sort of film. Like, you know, in Nicolas Cage, I do appreciate, a lot of people say he's, just bored and just going through the motions with it. I think it's just because they're used to him being just so outrageous and that with his roles. It's just, he's perfectly fine in the role. He's just subdued compared to normal. He just does. Like, I just
think he's playing a cop.
Yeah, that's it. It's just a normal cop. He's not like, there's no moment where he, like, there's a huge outburst where he, like, slams his fist on the table or tries to flip a table and over the top way and going, we need to do this for these girls or something like that. There, he does have the odd outburst, but it's perfectly natural and normal in terms of frustration rather than
put on.
Yeah, exactly. It's not overly dramatic. And then John Cusack as Hansen himself. I thought he was pretty good. He did capture that sort of creepiness to him and that sort of introverted nature of Hansen. And in a way, I'm glad he didn't kind of, play up the speech impediment, because that could have been, went so wrong. And
it could have went south really bad. Yeah,
it could have been mocking more than being accurate. Although it isn't technically maybe accurate in terms of the way that Robert maybe spoke, but at the same time, it doesn't sort of create this idea of like, oh, it's a bad thing to have a speech impediment because you're just like him. You know what I mean? That kind of idea.
Yeah, like they're not, I suppose, glamorizing or focusing on that aspect. Because it was one of those, I suppose, superficial, things that people mentioned about him, as being being a nerd or having acne scars or anything like that. Like, none of that is going to contribute to someone being a mental sociopath.
Exactly.
So that there wouldn't have been any, I think if you look at a picture of Robert Hansen and look at the sort of black and white mugshot of John Cusack in the film, like they do look quite similar, to be honest. The real horn ring glasses and the dark hair, and as you say, like he plays the subduedness of it all quite well. And the juxtaposition between him being a family man to then when he is torturing and suppose murdering these girls is good, because again, it's not completely over the top. You can say that it is someone, even the likes of you and me, that could be led to a real extreme sort of sense of frustration how you would behave. So you can kind of see it that way. But yeah, no, I did like it. For what it was at the end of the day, I suppose it's a true crime movie. You either do them really, really well, as you said, like Zodiac. Can't even think of any others.
Memories of Murder.
Memories of Murder. Stuff like that. Like some of the films we have covered, have done it very, very well. This, it's did it as an like, oh, it's okay.
It's a standard stuff.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's by no stretch of imagination it's bad, because like when you compare it to the last film, well, one of the last ones we covered, All Good Things, that film was just a bore, and it was an absolute, slog to get through. I know.
Yeah.
But this wasn't as bad. It was almost like the Wikipedia page playing out in front of you.
100%.
Yeah. With the embellishment of the side story with 50 Cent as her pimp, which honestly, like, the film itself's 1 hour and 45 minutes. And to be honest, the story they told is enough for about an hour 30, an hour 20. So all that just pads that out needlessly, and you're like, what is the point of this? It's basically like the sort of Cindy's life outside of this here, the actual crime itself. She's got this pimp who's constantly pestering her and so on and so forth, and then she's her friend who's like, okay, well, I'll take you out of that aspect of sex working, and then you can become a stripper at this club and all this here, and it's just like that's sort of deviating a wee bit away from the actual central story. I would have maybe wanted a bit more Cindy's actual personal life, a relationship with a family or anything out there. Because to be fair, I think in real life, the actual Cindy Paulson, she, as soon as this case was wrapped up, that was it. She more or less disappeared, and rightly so.
Rightly so, yeah.
You don't want that hanging over you the rest of your life. But yeah, the film itself, it's a lot of embellishment and padding out needlessly. It's a film where there's more film than story itself. But ultimately, it's alright. It's a fairly decent watch. It's and the scale of films that we've covered so far, it's slap bang in the middle. It's not really bad. It's not really good. It's just right in the middle for me.
What I would say is, though, and I think maybe why it sort of fell flat for me, I suppose, was that I knew about the story before the film. If me and Joe maybe aren't like hyping the film up, but by what we said, if it's something that interests you, it's an easy enough watch because it isn't that long. And if you're interested in crime or true crime movies, give it a shot. But what I would say is just don't read anything about the story before, because it is so by the book. And aside from the sort of the fleshing out of the pimp and that carry on with Cindy, it tells you everything you need to know. And then if you want to find out more about Robert or about Cindy as well, Google it after, essentially. Because I think that's what sort of made it feel a bit flat for me, was that I knew so much about the story before I watched it.
Oh, the end of the film, though, just really annoyed me, though. Because what they do is, like they do in all these sort of true crime films, right? And rightly so, they do show, the victims. But it's the song they have playing over it. It's like something by Nickelback or something. You're just like, oh God, just put something orchestral or something in there that's a bit more respectful. Like the song that they played, it was just like the most cringy, cheesy thing.
It was like the type of song. It was like the type of song that plays at like end of second year, like your end of second year maths or something. Yeah. So like you have like your PowerPoint of everybody, and then what's that song? Is it Green Day has a song that's like
Time Your Life,
like one of them songs, and it's like you're literally, and what at the very end it is quite nice because they do they show pictures of all of the victims and their names and what happened and their ages and things, and then as you said, to put that
that music over it.
That music, so I can't even think that pop rocky.
Yes, I mean Nickelback, it's like pure Nickelback, Creed, something like that there. It's just so out of place, and it just is really jarring. And like I said, a bit of orchestral music, like they had throughout the films, like just put a bit of that music over that there, so the impact of that there can sink in a bit more,
or the impact of it all. Essentially, maybe they didn't need music at all if they just had silence and they just put pictures.
Yeah. Yeah.
The focus then is solely on the victims, not like me and you. Or disrespect them or anything, but the fact that me and you are talking about the end of the movie and talking about how shit the music they put in.
No, it's
taken that away and just had the photos and that, then that probably would have had given more of a solemn justice than anything else, really.
Yeah, this is purely a dig at the director's choice. It's nothing to do with the victims at all.
Oh, no.
Don't get me wrong.
No.
That's usually Therese's game, to make fun of.
100%. That is normally my forte.
Exactly. But no, the film itself is pretty good. Nothing great. It's hard to really say much more about it. I think, the more I think about the whole embellishment of Cindy's story, I think that whole thing was to just create a sense of tension as you get towards the end. Because at the time of they bring in Robert to question him about the crimes and that there, it's sort of it's alongside Cindy's story where she goes back to her pimp, but there's this other guy that Robert had hired to get Cindy because he sort of wants to tie up the loose end. Even though that's the bit that's completely made up as far as I know, because
it's 100% fabricated.
Because once Robert let someone go, he was like, "No, they're a sex worker, and who's going to believe them?" And he was right to an extent.
He didn't hunt them out again. He didn't care.
No, it was like, great, you're gone, right? So it's a bit of a loss, but sure, at the end of the day, who's going to believe you anyway? It's me against you.
And
But yeah,
that purely comes down to the fact that if you look up the attack on the real estate agent, the housewife, that yes, he was arrested for it, but I mean, if he ever really wanted to do anything to her, he would have went back.
exactly.
But he didn't.
Yeah, yeah. Like in the film, yeah, it just creates this false tension with this fella.
It's a real weird fabrication, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, it's a race against time. We have to get to Cindy before, this guy does, and...
this guy who we don't know who his name is.
No, I think he's basically like a guy who works at the strip club or something like that.
Yeah,
I think he's a bouncer or something.
A bouncer, yeah.
Yeah, and then he hunts them down, and he shoots 50 Cent in the head. Sorry for the spoilers, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. It's literally
doesn't matter, and it did
left
happen.
the whole part and just cut it out of the film. Like, who gives a fuck? But anyway, you could do that, and yeah, things like that. You're just like kind of going, oh, come on now, like, come on. But yeah, it's a film. It's got a lot of cliches for a true crime film with the sort of dialogue and the situations. A cop nearing towards the retirement and stuff like that. There, the 2D character of his wife who's just like there to go, oh, you have a family at home, blah blah blah, that usual nonsense that they have in these films.
The commissioner who doesn't believe his story,
and all of that stuff. That is the negative aspects. The positives, it's solidly acted. I think it's handled quite well. It starts, in a fairly,
fairly accurate. I would say, apart from those, and they really are a minority part of the film, of the thing with 50 Cent and the other guy. Like, that is quite a small thing, which I think,
and it sticks out.
It sticks out because they try to make something big out of it, but it's so small. You could disregard it. Exactly. Everything else, in terms of so from what I could say, they use the real photos of the victims in the records. They use their real names the whole way through. Everything apart from that small snippet is true to form, and it is a depiction, and it doesn't glamorize the story, because at the end of the day, it isn't a glamorous story. It's a really horrific story, that probably should be more well known. But I think because where it is in America, like, America literally is the murder capital of the world. Like, it's just everywhere. At the time, who knows who could have been running about? Ted Bundy, all the big hard hitters could have been running about at that time. And yeah, whenever you sort of listen to your more known true crime podcasts or your books, there's really not very much on it. Although I think there is one book, I think the guys in the last podcast on the left touched upon, but it isn't very forgiving toward the sex workers. It's quite derogatory. I think from memory, the guys were basically like, we read this because you didn't have to, type of thing. Like, don't read it. It's not a great book.
Like, it gave the facts, but then the extra context is just
not great. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's pretty much it then when it comes to Bobby Hansen and
Frozen Ground.
Like, the thing is, Frozen Ground, there's not a lot to say really about it in the grand scheme of things. Hopefully the next sort of film we pick, there'll be more to flesh out with the film, but
yeah,
there's not much to say about it really. I think it was on Netflix for a period.
I think it's on Prime at the minute, but you need to be a premium Prime member, so I think you can rent it for like £2. Okay. But it's also the type of film I would imagine, if it hasn't already been, it'll be on film for at one time.
That's it. It'll be a film for 11 o'clock film. Just keep an eye out for it. If you're sort of interested in the story, it's a good sort of companion piece to have alongside it, but just be sort of wary of the story itself and the actual facts rather than the embellishments. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. Nothing else to say other than thanks very much for listening. And if you like what you hear, you can listen to our main podcast, the We Need to Talk About Movies podcast, as well as the other sub podcasts. I think it's Gabrielle. She does one about cosplay. I think it's sort of going through a name change at the minute. I can't remember what the name of it is exactly. Victoria's still curating her Disney series. We need to talk about Disney. And I don't believe there's any other sub ones apart from the main one. We need to talk about movies and ourselves.
No, you're right. I mean, I think you guys next week are recording the Christmas episode, so
yeah,
that's going to be coming out. I'm not sure if this week is the last week of the TV show for the year. But
they're all on YouTube now, by the way. Sorry, we have a YouTube channel, so you can catch all that there.
Current and past episodes.
Yes.
Any events that we have coming up. I suppose, like everybody knows, the good old Omicron's flying about. So events wise, don't know too much what's coming up, but if there is anything coming up, it'll be on our website, BanterFlix.com.
All the socials as well, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So keep an eye out on that if you are interested in us and any events that we have coming up. But other than that, there's nothing else really to say. But Merry Christmas, and I hope you all have a nice and safe time with your loved ones. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you very much for listening again.
Thanks, Jim. I was going to call you Jim. I always do this.
I thought you were going to say shit.
No,
thanks, shithead.
Jim, you're shithead.
Merry Christmas, you shithead.
No, just to echo what Joe said. Merry Christmas. Stay safe, given everything going on. And all being well, Joe and I should be back in January for our 11th episode. As long as we don't get lazy again. But other than that, thanks for listening and goodbye.
Bye.